Alright, before we start the video, I've got to get a few things off my chest. Not so much a disclaimer, much an admission of severe flaws. The first of which is that I watch anime dubbed. That's just a fact. That's right, yet another little dum-dum ruined the anime community with their uncultured opinions. Forever tainted by the simple fact that my smooth brain is incapable of reading my anime at light speed. So I've got to use the age-old crutch that is the English dub. Hold up. You hear that? That's the complete absence of sound, as the single person who dared to click on this video has now closed the browser and subsequently burned their device to keep from catching my dummy cooties. The second admission is that more often than not, the way I experience Isekai is originally through the anime. If I like the experience, then I will often pick up a light novel or two, maybe even a manga if I'm feeling spunky. So no, sadly I won't be comparing the source material to the anime's series of events. But who knows, maybe if that kind of content is something you'd enjoy, it might come down the road for this channel. With that out of the way, it's finally time for me to talk about the Isekai of the century, Charlotte's Web. What do you mean I watched the wrong thing? You're telling me that the spider and the pig aren't teens isekai'd into a fantasy world. Actually, that makes a lot of sense. All right, peeps, I seem to have gotten ahead of myself, so if you'll give me just a second, I will be right back.
2,000 years later.
Fuck yeah, that's more like it. My name is Von Hyde, I'm that Isekai guy, and today we'll be talking about Soma Spider, So What? Hey everybody, this is me after the fact, actually editing this video, realizing how annoying it is to find legitimate scenes from the anime. So it might be a little sparse in this video. It's what I was planning on doing, but apparently Crunchyroll has some interesting software to keep me from capturing anything, among other things. So I'll try to find as much as I can, but yeah, whatever. Originally published as a series of web novels, Soma Spider So What follows Kumiko, who, for simplicity's sake from now on, I will refer to as White, as they and their classmates are all reincarnated into a fantasy world. The premise on paper is your standard isekai fare, but like some old German dude said, the devil's in the details. As it turns out that White, unlike the majority of their classmates, has been reincarnated as a monster. A spider of all things. Oh, I get it now. Soma Spider, so what? That's clever. That's clever. In all seriousness, it's like isekai authors take pleasure in the fact that you're winded after spouting off their names. I'm looking at you. I've been killing slimes for 300 years and maxed out my level. Fuck me. White in their newly acquired body must slowly traverse the treacherous Great Elro Labyrinth, along the way befriending literally no one because fuck you and your feelings, and instead endeavors to slaughter anything and everything that comes across their path. If that wasn't bad enough, our arachnid protag then devours the corpses. Now I know there are a few people watching this that are like, Hajime ate a bunch of monsters and Ari for wear and tear, no one bitches about that. To which I say, yeah, he did. And their meat gave him dope white hair and cum gutters, so it's just hard to argue with those results. But even if I weren't a soulless husk in Weeb's clothing and actually gave a damn about the dungeon creatures, there's one thing that Hajime didn't do. Eat his fucking brother. That's right, our dear Lady White is down with the cannibal crowd. In their defense, this was largely done out of necessity, as White would have starved otherwise, not to mention the fact that this situation that many would deem amoral serves as somewhat of the inciting incident for White as they attained the taboo skill, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Much of the first two episodes is White coming into their own as a spider. They take down their first monster, build a dope web house, and even obtain a worm egg from an adventurer. But the acquisition of said prize is actually their downfall. as the adventurer who escapes returns with their party and burns White's home down in the process. This interaction teaches White that there is truly no safe place in the labyrinth and begins their pursuit for power. As a few more episodes fly by, our little spider finds himself in fight after fight, sometimes only surviving by the skin of their teeth, until eventually stumbling upon the Earth Dragon Aruba, whose dumbfounding show of strength cements White's need to survive at all costs. Throughout each encounter, White levels up, obtains new skills, and even evolves into other more advanced species of arachnid. This almost constant series of metamorphosis allows them to take on more difficult opponents and eventually climb to the upper stratum of the labyrinth. One thing I absolutely adore about So I'm a Spider, So What is the constant feeling of White's progression. Unlike many an isekai protagonist, White actually has to earn their power over time. It's not until they gain the Ruler of Perseverance title and subsequently unlock the Evil Eyes that I'd even begin to put them on the level of your boilerplate isekai protag. And that doesn't happen until episode 7. Not to mention the fact that these OP skills leave White blinded and aren't even guaranteed to kill, as some monsters are immune. Compare this to the aforementioned Ari Fuerta, where Hajime is able to use their synergist skills to become seriously overpowered in the first episode through the creations of guns and fucking grenades. Don't get me wrong, one of the reasons I love isekai is for the power fantasy. Hell, I adore the Lizard Man arc in Overlord, which is basically just one gigantic flex. Honestly, now that I think about it, Overlord is just Ainz exuding colossal dick energy. It's series like So I'm a Spider, So What, The Rising of the Shield Hero, and Grimgar that keep the genre feeling fresh. They forego the ridiculous feats of muscular tension in the beginning to instead show the grueling journeys our heroes must embark on. This makes those moments where our MC goes head to head with godlike beings feel earned. In the case of So I'm a Spider, So What, we are shown White's journey from their literal birth. We watch as they flee from a small group of adventurers. We watch as they hide from a pack of Bagragratch. I hate it. It's the worst. The dumbest name for a monster I've ever heard. It's like every monster in this fucking anime is just to tongue tie anybody who wants to talk about it. It's fucking absurd. And we watch as they cower in the presence of Aruba. So when White later takes on these very opponents, it's hard not to burst into a fit of tears as they're felled. All the fear and longing that was once felt in those few moments is replaced with a sense of pure bliss. And then White feasts on their corpses. So far in this video, I've omitted one glaring detail that I'm assuming some among you are going to find annoying. You'll also probably find it annoying that I'm obviously reading this script, but whatever. That being that this isn't just White's journey. Throughout the first season, each and every episode is telling two very different stories. One is the aforementioned journey of White as they navigate the labyrinth, and the other actually follows the rest of their classmates while attending the Royal Academy. More specifically, follows Schlaine, aka Shun, as they attend classes, go on fun camping trips, and almost die. You know, just normal teenager stuff. There are of course a few episodes where one story is more dominant than another, such as episode 4, which entirely focuses on White as they take on an army of monkey monsters, or episode 7, where Shun is almost assassinated by one of his classmates while on a field trip. But for the most part, I'd estimate that there's roughly a 50-50 split between the two. If I'm being honest, in the first few episodes, I found it pretty annoying when the narrative shifted to Shun at the academy. This was mostly because it seemed unnecessary. In the first episode, Shun attends a ball thrown for all those who've been accepted into the academy. Nothing's really gained from this shift in focus, with the exception being a confirmation that seemingly all the students in White's class had been reincarnated into this world and are somehow finding one another through the aid of Miss Oka, their former teacher. In the second episode, we learn that Hugo, one of the reincarnated classmates, has a massive chip on his shoulder. Shun loves his brother, who just so happens to be this world's hero, and that Faye is actually an earthworm, which is the predecessor species to dragons. It's kind of an out there point, but turns out the anime seemingly mistranslated worm into dragon. So often enough, they say that Faye is a dragon. She's not. She's an earthworm. She's literally like the first she's basically like what a caterpillar is to a butterfly is a earthworm to an earth dragon. Entirely different things. She's not a fucking dragon, okay? She's pretty cool. She's pretty cute. Episode 3 is where I really think Shun's story starts to earn its keep. And before you ask, no, it's not because it has a little bit more action than the previous outings. This is when I believe that Shun's journey really starts to define its role in the series. That being to flesh out the overall world and more often than not, answer long dormant questions. In this episode, we learn about one of the world's many religions, aptly titled the Word of God, in which believers focus on leveling up their skills to hear God's voice. We're given a brief explanation on how magic works and are shown a few different types, specifically water, fire, and light. This episode also begins Hugo's descent into a fit of jealousy-induced madness due to Shun's surge in popularity after felling the earthworm. For her part in this fight, Faye earns the Kin Eater title. Sadly, as it turns out, the earthworm that they helped kill was actually one of Faye's family members. Shun says that this means that the worm had to be one of Faye's parents, but that's just not true. This could easily be one of their siblings, similar to White's acquisition of the title. From then we skip to episode 5, where the story of this world continues to come at a drip feed pace. Tensions between Hugo and Shun continue to rise, and Yuri butts into a conversation seemingly just to inform the audience that those with the taboo skill are hated. More specifically, Yuri, as a member of the Word of God, makes it their mission to kill any and all creatures with the skill, saying, "I'ma fucking read this bitch right off my sheet here, okay? No one should be allowed to have a skill that God themselves has declared taboo." I only mention this because it continues to raise questions as to what the taboo skill actually does. Moving on to episode 6, where we finally get to meet Julius. That's right, we finally get to meet the older brother that Shun is always simping for. Seriously, any chance that Shun gets to talk about his brother is seized without a second thought and is end capped by him staring off into the air lovingly. If we're being honest though, simps kind of run in the Onalite family. All we're ever taught about Sue, for instance, is that she definitely wants to get deep dicked by Shun, and in turn, Shun wants a piece of Julius's thrust bucket. Why the author Okinababa didn't let incest be the avenue through which Shun gained taboo completely baffles me. But whatever, we'll just move past it. The hero and their party are currently delving into the depths of the Great Elro Labyrinth to kill a spider known as the Nightmare's Vestige. Julius explains that the vestiges were left in the labyrinth by a creature known only as the Nightmare of the Labyrinth. I think this is an awesome introduction to Julius's character, as before this all we know about him comes from Shun's stories. We're shown that Julius and his party are incredibly competent fighters, as well as Julius's ability to lead in high-stakes situations. Overall, I think they live up to Shun's glowing praise. The only thing that somewhat sucked about this introduction is how much I enjoyed the scene. The dynamic between the hero's party is really cute, and my feelings of sadness continue to compound knowing that after this we'll once again have to return to the far less interesting Onalai brother. Also, the Nightmare's Vestige in this instance uses telepathy to speak, and their voice sounds like the Mortal Kombat Fatality soundbite, which really makes me happy. Now on to episode 7. As I mentioned earlier in the video, this is much more of a Shun dominated episode, as a few of the students from the academy set out on a field trip. Yuri once again takes a moment to hammer the importance of the taboo skill into our heads. Hugo finally makes his move on Shun, but his attempted assassination is thwarted by Miss Oka. As a consequence for his behavior, Oka then goes as far as using an unnamed ruler skill to strip him of all of his stats and skills. This is exactly what I meant by Shun's story being more focused on world building than anything. While much of this episode is dedicated to the assassination attempt, the most worthwhile information comes not from Shun's survival, but the manipulation of the world systems. Episode 8 shows very little of Shun's story with the exception of a flashback to a time when the class was still alive and healthy in their own world. There's a brief moment where we see Hugo in his former life cheer on Shun when they successfully score a goal in soccer, which makes me incredibly sad as it goes to show that the greatest people can be corrupted by power. From there we move to episode 9. This is honestly where the story of Soma Spider So What really enters my pantheon of isekai. In this episode, Julius visits Shun at the academy while on his way to the Empire to prepare for an impending war. This scene is really just an excuse for two things. One, for Julius and Shun to share a loving embrace. Once again, why Okinababa doesn't just let them be lovers baffles me. And 2, to drop a bomb on my entire fucking life. As Sue and Faye enter the room, Julius realizes that the once small familiar has grown quite a bit since he's last set eyes on them. I literally had to read that fucking thing because while proofreading this, I fucking messed it up like 25 times. It was absurd. He then goes on to give a bit of backstory that neither Shun nor Faye know anything about. It turns out that both Julius's scarf and Faye originate from the same place. 15 years earlier, a group of adventurers came upon a spider's nest in the Great Elro Labyrinth. After burning away all the webbing, they found several large bundles of Teratect web and an earthworm egg. The webbing was knitted into Julius's scarf by his mother, while the egg eventually hatched, birthing Faye into this world. If you're confused, I don't blame you. To make a long story short, up until this point, and actually much of what follows in Soma Spider So What has been told out of order. If you remember earlier in the video, I talked about White coming across a worm egg that was later stolen as adventurers burnt down their nest. These two instances are one and the same, making all of White's labyrinthian escapades dated by over a decade. Let's pause this summary for a second so I can let you in on a little tidbit about me. I'm one of those people who loves things spoiled for me, for no other reason than the pure joy of witnessing the build up to this moment. But this shit broke me. I remember sitting on my couch racking my brain in an effort to visualize the lead up to this moment. 8 fucking episodes laying the groundwork for this one masterful moment, and it's revealed almost as a bid for attention. It's not even prompted. Julius goes from thanking Faye for saving his lover's life to talking about how dope his scarf is. And that's when it hit me. The reason that this reveal is so nonchalant is the very reason that I adore this anime, because everything is foreshadowed. Every major reveal through Soma Spider So What's 24 episode run is clearly hinted at far before coming to light. At times it's more obvious, like Hugo's descent into villainy, but more often than not it's as simple as a word or the reflection in a window. It's because of this that I can say with absolute confidence, no matter what happens throughout the series, we'll never reach the point where we jump the shark. For instance, when it's eventually revealed that the mysterious woman that killed Julius is none other than our beloved arachnid protagonist, I didn't bat an eye. Actually, it's the opposite. From the moment the Demon Lord Ariel was revealed at the end of episode 6, I had a sneaking suspicion that the woman next to her was White. Of course, this idea was mostly anchored by their color scheme. The only character thus far that was primarily colored in white and pink was Kumiko. Moving forward to episode 9, during a meeting of Ariel's lieutenants, we hear her speak for the first time, and wouldn't you know it, she's voiced by the very same person as Kumiko. In episode 10, while looking out amongst the corpses strewn across a battlefield, Ronant, he's a fucking wizard. He's the Gandalf of Soma Spider So What, okay? Literally says that the Nightmare of the Labyrinth, aka White, was involved in the war. In episode 11, Tyrins is relaying Julius's fate to Shun. He describes the woman as being all white, and we finally get a clear look at her face. If you watch closely, just before she uses the rod attack that obliterates Julius, you can clearly see the glow of 8 small sparkles within her eye. Not to mention that the actual use of the rod attack itself is a hint at her identity, as Kumiko unlocked the rod attack by evolving into the Zoa Ella all the way back in episode 6. God, my balls are like all bunched up. It's fucking ridiculous. Plus, it literally talks about Kumiko having both a rod attack and a similar skill in the Annihilating Evil Eye less than 3 minutes after Hyrens mentions it to Shun. And the hints just keep coming after that. By the time Kumiko learns that they can evolve into the Arachne and gain a human body, I was ready to claw my eyes out in anticipation for the reveal. These are just a few instances of the amazing foreshadowing that I've come across in Spider. I'm just blown away by the amount of thought that Okinobaba has put into the development of this story. The second the credits rolled on Spider's first season, I couldn't wait to consume more. There's just so much here to love. The premise itself is so intriguing. Me being a huge fan of Isekai like Overlord, and that time I got reincarnated as a slime, to then come across Spider, an anime that feels tailored to my exact needs, is nothing short of kismet. But that's not to say that it's perfect in any way. I, for one, detest 3D animation, which is kind of a problem, as much of Soma Spider So What, at least when it comes to White's story, is animated in 3D. It even bleeds into Shun's side of the story by the end of this season. When Faye evolves into the Lightworm, she's almost entirely animated in 3D. This mic is so fucking heavy, and I've been holding it for like 40 minutes while recording this. My arm's about to die. There are even some instances within the last 2 episodes where Shun himself is treated to the extra dimension. That being said, it was never a deal breaker for me. I mean, I watched 2016's Berserk. If I can overlook that, I can overlook anything. There's also the fact that Shun's side of the story is just bland for most of the season. It really takes Julius's death to give the story any weight, and even then it's just meh. If we're being real though, Shun fucking sucks. There's literally no depth to his character. So far, all we've seen is his heroic side. This dude literally watches his father get domed and is completely over it within less than an episode. It took me longer to get over the visual of his dad's gaping skull than it did his fucking son. What? Once again, I want to be completely real here. I haven't read any of the source material. But while doing research for this video, I came to realize that the anime so far has done several characters dirty. Katya, for instance, is just a shell of a person. Their only purpose in the anime seems to be the spouting of exposition. But if the Spider fandom page is to be believed, Katya has actually been suffering from gender dysphoria throughout most of the first season. For those who don't know, gender dysphoria is a sense of unease caused by the mismatch of someone's biological sex and their gender identity. This can result in, among other things, severe anxiety and depression. Katya's gender dysphoria is brought on by their having been reincarnated into this world as a woman while still retaining their memories and gender identity from their previous life as a Japanese man. I can say without a shadow of a doubt that any amount of exploration into Katya's character would have greatly benefited the anime. But the closest we get to the acknowledgement of any such issue is in the first episode, where Hugo laughs at Katya being a woman, to which she responds that it took her quite a while to get over the difference. Now, I'm not sure how or when it's revealed in the web novels, but if the first season of Spider is any indication of what the future of this anime will be like, I have little to no faith in moments like these ever being explored. This lack of any real exploration also extends to another major part of Spider's world: the skills. I'm not even talking about the system itself, because I know eventually it gets an explanation in possibly season 2. I'm talking about the actual definition of what some skills do and how to level them. For every evil eye skill the anime takes the time to explain, there are those like taboo, mercy, and lust that fly by with little to no fanfare. While preparing for this video, through fact checking and writing the script, I've watched Spider's first season from beginning to end almost 3 times. But I still couldn't tell you how the fuck Hugo brainwashed Katya and Sue. I initially thought it had something to do with the ring Hugo was wearing. It wasn't until reading their character breakdowns on the fandom page that I found out it's actually the result of the lust skill. Now, I understand the need to keep the ruler skills somewhat secretive, but at the very least, we need an explanation of taboo. We're eventually told that taboo gives the user knowledge of this world's history, among other things, but how the hell do people keep leveling it up though? Also, the anime barely mentioned that Shun gains the taboo skill. It's only made known when it reaches level 10. Damn, that shit escalated quickly. For all those who don't know, the taboo skill itself is attained through doing things that are deemed unnatural in this world, and that is actually how it's leveled up. Ergo, White's use of things like heresy magic, abyss magic, and such, and Shun's use of mercy, where he literally brings people back to life. There is one thing I will praise the anime, or more specifically Crunchyroll, for when it comes to skills. More often than not, in anime with gaming influences, the heads-up display isn't translated, or they only translate need-to-know information. Spider, on the other hand, translates everything. Luckily, there is one person that Spider goes out of its way to flesh out, and that's Kumiko. I know it's a little weird to praise something for doing the bare minimum, but there's just so much depth to this character. The adapters easily could have left out the plethora of anime and pop culture references, the slang, or the frequent scenes of Kumiko just goofing off. Yet they seem to understand that these moments are the reason we fall in love with the character. Those brief instances of levity make the hard times Kumiko must wade through so much more meaningful. I don't know if Araba's end would have hit so damn hard if I hadn't heard Kumiko joking about being your friendly neighborhood web slinger just a few episodes earlier. Soma Spider So What is not the greatest isekai of all time. Digimon. That's not because of any of the reasons that I've listed in this video. Yes, the 3D animation can look like total anus. Yes, it has a severe amount of underdeveloped characters, and yes, Hugo changes outfits more often than JoJo changes protagonists. But none of these matter when you look at the product as a whole. All of Spider's flaws are easily overshadowed by its fantastic MC, engaging story, and absolutely stellar use of foreshadowing. No, Soma Spider So What isn't the greatest isekai of all time because it's in a league of its own. Thank you for watching. If you made it this far, obviously this is one of like my first attempts to make videos on this channel to talk about isekai or anything like that. I'm a real big fan of isekai. I'm not used to filming videos like this, so obviously I read from the script several times, but I really don't give a shit. I really enjoyed the anime and I think it's incredibly worth your time. I think it's so much fun. I really hope we get a season 2. I said earlier in the video that I had no experience with the light novels, web novels, and or manga, but I ended up actually picking up one of the manga volumes specifically because I think the art style is fucking amazing. It easily suits its comedic tone so well, and I'm really just excited to get into it. So far it seems like they only have 12 volumes out, at least physically, and those seem to only cover the story up to White's fight with Aruba, but I am really excited to pick up those manga volumes, and I'm really excited to continue videos on this channel. I plan on doing more pseudo reviews, breakdowns of anime, and possibly even some video essays. I plan on possibly doing a video essay on the amazing amount of foreshadowing within Soma Spider So What, so please subscribe to this channel, like it, give it a like, fucking share it with your friends, whatever. I don't really know. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have more isekai to watch. I'm honestly just glad that I made it through this entire video and the whole anime without wanting to fuck a spider. It's very refreshing. Motherfucker.